I can't be the prize. You will never forget this night, darling. She was given to a mafia boss as payment for a wager. They thought her body made her worthless. They thought humiliation would be enough to satisfy a debt. They thought Killian Blackwood would destroy her. They were wrong. And she was being given to him as compensation. Isadora Quinn stood in the foyer of the Blackwood estate, her hands trembling at her sides, but she did not cry. She had learned long ago that tears only fed cruelty. Her body had always been the excuse. Too big, too slow, too visible, too easy to blame. Tonight, it had made her disposable. They stopped her 3 steps away from the shadowed chair where he sat. "She's yours now," her uncle sneered, forcing a laugh that echoed too loud in the marble hall. "Consider it compensation for the wager." A gift, really. A joke. Compensation. Like she was an object. A burden. A punchline. Killian Blackwood did not react. He sat perfectly still, fingers steepled beneath his chin, eyes unreadable in the dim candlelight. He didn't look angry. He didn't look pleased. He looked bored. That terrified her more than shouting ever could. "She's useless," her cousin added quickly, his voice rising with nerves. "Couldn't follow orders, couldn't keep her mouth shut, caused more trouble than she's worth. We figured, well, you'd know what to do with her." They were trying to justify themselves. That was when Izzy realized something was profoundly wrong. People did not justify themselves to Killian Blackwood. Not if they valued their lives. The room fell silent. The Mafia boss finally lifted his gaze. Not to them. To her. For a moment, she forgot how to breathe. She had imagined this man 1,000 times. A monster. A butcher. Someone who would confirm everything the world had ever told her about her worth. Instead, his eyes held something else. Not disgust. Not amusement. Calculation. Not of her body. Of the cruelty in the room. "Leave," he said calmly. The men hesitated. "She's..." "I said leave." His voice never rose. It didn't need to. They disappeared within seconds. The door shut. Locked. She stood there alone with him, her heart pounding so hard she felt dizzy. This was the moment. The moment everyone had promised her would come. Pain. Humiliation. Perhaps death. He stood slowly, his height making her instinctively step back. "What did they say you did?" he asked. She swallowed. "They said I failed." "Failed at what?" She forced the words out. "Being quiet. Being grateful. Being less." Silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed. Not cruelly. Bitterly. "They used you," he said, "because you were convenient." She stared at him, confused. "You're not afraid," he observed. "I am," she said honestly. "I just don't have anywhere left to put it." Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, perhaps. Or respect. "Look at me," he said. She did. "You were not given to me as punishment," he continued. "You were given to me because they believed I would erase you." Her chest tightened. "And will you?" "No." She blinked. "Why?" "Because I don't destroy people to make cowards feel powerful." Her knees nearly gave out. "But everyone says." "Everyone lies," he cut in quietly. "Especially when they want blood without guilt." She stood frozen. Years of shame screamed that this kindness was a trick. That safety never lasted. That she didn't deserve reprieve. He noticed. "Stay," he corrected. "If you want. You will not be harmed here." She searched his face for deception. Found none. "What do you want from me?" she asked, barely audible. His answer shocked her more than anything else that night. Nothing. The room they gave her later was warm. Clean. The bed was untouched, food waiting on the table. No locks on the inside. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. This was worse than punishment. This was confusion. She had built her entire identity around endurance. Around surviving cruelty. Around being unwanted. Now, in the house of the most ruthless man alive, she was being treated like a human being. Down the hall, Killian Blackwood stood alone in his study, staring at the closed door. He had taken her not because of honor, not because of mercy. He had taken her because he recognized something in her eyes he saw every morning in his own mirror. Survival without surrender. And that, he thought, was worth more than any wager his enemies could ever understand. What they didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that in 3 weeks' time, a woman named Tiana Reed would arrive at his gates with twin daughters and a claim to his empire. And the woman they'd thrown away as worthless would be the only thing standing between his past and his future. The only question was whether Isadora Quinn would finally believe she was worth defending. Killian Blackwood had learned to recognize desperation by the pitch of a man's voice. The higher it climbed, the more lies were being told. Right now, Marcus Quinn's voice could shatter glass. She's worthless, Mr. Blackwood, truly worthless. We tried everything with her. Every job, every task. She couldn't even manage the simplest. Stop talking. The words came out flat, bored. Killian didn't bother looking up from the contract on his desk. He'd invited the Quinn family into his study precisely 3 minutes ago, and already he regretted the courtesy. Marcus fell silent mid-sentence, his mouth still open like a fish drowning in air. Killian finally raised his eyes. The 4 men standing before him, Marcus, his brother Daniel, and 2 cousins whose names he hadn't bothered learning, were sweating despite the cool evening air. Good. They should be. You came here, Killian said slowly, to deliver payment for a wager your father lost. A wager he staked his entire shipping operation on. A wager he knew he would lose. Yes, but I didn't ask a question. Killian leaned back in his chair, studying them the way a biologist might study insects. You were supposed to bring me the deed to the warehouses. Instead, you brought me a woman. She's worth more than Daniel started. Worth more than property? Killian's laugh was cold. You're not here to pay a debt. You're here to justify cruelty and pretend it's commerce. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus tried again, his voice shaking now. With all respect, Mr. Blackwood, we thought you'd appreciate the flexibility. She's family, technically, but she's never really been one of us. Too much trouble. Too much. Too much what? Killian stood, and all 4 men took an involuntary step back. Too visible? Too inconvenient? Too honest about what pathetic cowards you are? No one answered. Killian walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Outside, his guards stood in formation, waiting. One word from him, and the Quinn family would cease to exist by dawn. They knew it. He knew they knew it. That's why they'd brought her. Not as payment. As a shield. You think I'm a monster, Killian said quietly, still facing the window. You think I'll take her and do unspeakable things, and that will somehow absolve you of the debt and the shame. You'll go home and tell everyone how merciful you were, giving her a quick death instead of a slow one. Mr. Blackwood, we never. Killian turned, and the movement was so sharp that Marcus stumbled backward into his brother. Get out, Killian said. Before I change my mind about letting you keep your tongues. They fled. Didn't even bother with dignity or goodbyes. Just ran like the rats they were, leaving the girl standing alone in the corridor outside his study. Killian returned to his desk and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. He could see her silhouette through the frosted glass of his study door. She hadn't moved. Hadn't tried to run or plead or bargain. She was waiting for judgment like someone who'd stopped believing mercy was possible. That, Killian thought, taking a slow sip, was the most dangerous thing about her. She'd already survived the worst thing most people could imagine, which meant she had nothing left to lose. The woman who led Izzy upstairs didn't speak. She was older, gray-haired, with kind eyes that somehow made everything worse. Kindness was always a prelude to cruelty in Izzy's experience. The softer the beginning, the harder the fall. They climbed 3 flights of stairs, past oil paintings of stern-faced men and women who looked like they'd never smiled in their lives, and stopped at a door at the end of a quiet hallway. The woman opened it and stepped aside. Izzy didn't move. Go on, the woman said gently. It's yours. Yours. The word felt foreign, like a language Izzy had never learned. She stepped inside and immediately looked for the trap. The room was too large. Too clean. A four-poster bed dominated the space, covered in cream-colored linens that looked untouched. A fireplace crackled softly in the corner. On a small table near the window sat a tray of food, bread, cheese, fruit, soup still steaming. There's a bathroom through there, the woman said, pointing to a door on the left. Fresh towels, toiletries. If you need anything, pull the cord by the bed. Someone will come. Izzy turned slowly, searching the woman's face for the punchline. The door, Izzy said quietly. Does it lock? From the inside, yes. Not the outside. The woman smiled, and it reached her eyes. You're safe here, miss. Mr. Blackwood's orders. Then she left, closing the door with a soft click. Izzy stood frozen in the center of the room, her heart hammering against her ribs. This was worse than a cell. Worse than chains. This was confusion, and confusion was a torture she hadn't prepared for. She walked to the door and turned the lock. It clicked smoothly. She unlocked it. Locked it again. 3 times testing, waiting for it to fail or trap her. It didn't. The food smelled real. She approached it like it might bite, lifting the spoon from the soup and watching steam curl into the air. Poison would be efficient. Quick. But why bother with kindness first? Why the room, the fire, the soft bed? She ate anyway. If death came, it wouldn't be on an empty stomach. The soup was warm, rich, perfectly seasoned. She ate the bread next, then the cheese, then the fruit. Each bite felt like an accusation. She didn't deserve this. She'd never deserved anything. When the tray was empty, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at her hands. Her family had called her useless for years. Too slow, too visible, too much. They'd made her believe her existence was an apology she could never finish making. And now she was here, in the house of a man who killed without hesitation, being treated like a guest instead of trash. She wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. She'd used them all years ago, back when she still believed crying changed anything. Now she just felt hollow, carved out, waiting for the other shoe to drop, because it always did. The fire popped softly. Outside, the estate was silent. Izzy lay back on the bed, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. The mattress was softer than anything she'd ever touched. The pillow cradled her head like it mattered. This was the cruelest thing anyone had ever done to her. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't know what she was supposed to survive. Izzy woke to a knock on the door. Not pounding. Not demanding. Just 3 soft taps that somehow felt more ominous than breaking glass. Come in, she said, sitting up quickly, smoothing her wrinkled dress. She hadn't meant to fall asleep. Killian Blackwood stepped inside, and the room suddenly felt smaller. He'd changed from his formal suit into dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked almost human. Almost. You ate, he observed, glancing at the empty tray. I did. She met his eyes because looking away felt like losing. He walked to the window, hands in his pockets, studying the grounds below. Most people in your position would have refused the food. Suspected poison. Starvation as a form of control. Most people haven't lived my life. He turned to face her, and there was something calculating in his expression. Not cruel. Curious. Why aren't you afraid? The question landed like a stone in still water. Izzy stood slowly, buying herself time. How did you explain to a predator that you'd already been devoured? That there was nothing left of you worth fearing for? I am afraid, she said finally. I'm terrified. You don't act like it. Because I don't have anywhere left to put it. The words came out raw, unpolished. Fear it's expensive. It costs energy I don't have. It requires hope that things could get worse, and I stopped believing that years ago. Killian's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. Recognition, maybe. Your family, he said quietly. They treated you like this often? They treated me like I was supposed to be grateful for existing. Izzy crossed her arms, not defensively, just to hold herself together. Every meal was charity. Every roof over my head was mercy I didn't deserve. They made sure I knew that my body was evidence of greed, that my presence was a burden, that my silence was the only valuable thing I could offer. And yet you're still here. I'm still here because I'm too stubborn to give them the satisfaction of breaking. She laughed, bitter and sharp. They wanted me gone but didn't want blood on their hands. So they gave me to you. 2 birds, 1 stone. Killian stepped closer, and Izzy's breath caught. But he didn't reach for her. Didn't threaten. He just stood there, close enough that she could see the faint scar along his jawline. Do you know what cowards do? He asked softly. They convince themselves their cruelty is kindness. They call survival, stubbornness, and resilience trouble. They punish strength because it reminds them of their own weakness. Izzy stared at him, something tight in her chest loosening. Your family didn't give you to me because you failed, Killian continued. They gave you to me because you survived them. And they couldn't stand it. The words hit harder than any blow ever had. What do you want from me? Izzy whispered. Really? Killian held her gaze for a long moment. I want to see what happens when someone like you stops apologizing for taking up space. Then he walked to the door, paused with his hand on the handle. Breakfast is at 8. You're invited, not required. The choice is yours. He left, and Izzy stood alone in the warm room, trembling not from fear but from something infinitely more dangerous. Hope. The gates opened at precisely 9 in the morning, 3 days after Izzy's arrival. She was in the library, running her fingers along leather spines she'd never be educated enough to understand, when she heard the commotion. Raised voices. The kind of controlled chaos that came from people trying very hard to maintain dignity while losing control. She moved to the window and looked down at the circular driveway. A black Mercedes had pulled up to the entrance, and a woman was stepping out like she owned the estate. She was tall, slender, with dark hair that cascaded down her back in perfect waves. Designer sunglasses. A white pantsuit that probably cost more than Izzy had seen in her lifetime. Behind her, 2 small girls emerged from the car, identical twins with dark curls and cautious eyes. The woman removed her sunglasses with theatrical precision and looked up at the house like she was appraising property. Izzy felt something cold settle in her stomach. Mrs. Reed, one of the guards was saying, his voice carrying up through the open window. Mr. Blackwood didn't mention you were coming. Mr. Blackwood doesn't need to mention everything to his staff, the woman replied, her voice sharp and cultured. I'm Tiana Reed. Perhaps you've forgotten, but I have history here. Now step aside before I have to explain to Killian why his security failed to recognize the mother of his children. The words landed like grenades. Izzy's hand tightened on the windowsill. Children. Killian had children. The guard looked uncertain, glancing back at the house. I'll need to confirm with. You'll need to do your job and let me inside. Tiana placed her hands on the shoulders of the 2 girls. Hope, Faith, say hello to the nice man who's keeping you from your father. The twins remained silent, their small faces unreadable. Izzy turned from the window and nearly collided with Killian in the doorway. His expression was carved from stone, but his eyes held something she'd never seen before. Not anger. Something colder. Calculation mixed with old wounds. How long has she been out there? He asked quietly. Just arrived. Izzy stepped aside. She says the girls are yours. They are. He moved past her to the window, and Izzy watched his jaw tighten. Hope and Faith. 5 years old. You didn't mention. Because I haven't seen them in 4 years. His voice was flat, emotionless. Tiana left when they were 1. Took them. Cut off all contact. Refused visitation. Now she's here. Why now? Killian turned to face her, and there was something dangerous in his eyes. Because she heard I have you. Because she thinks I'm building something new. And Tiana Reed has never been able to stand someone else having what she threw away. Below, Tiana was walking toward the entrance, the twins trailing behind her like accessories. "What do you want me to do?" Izzy asked, though she already knew the answer would complicate everything. Killian looked at her for a long moment. "Stay visible. Stay close. And whatever happens, don't let her convince you that kindness is weakness." "I don't understand." "You will." He started toward the door, then paused. "Tiana is everything your family was, but smarter. She doesn't use fists. She uses shame. And she's very, very good at it." Then he was gone, leaving Izzy alone in the library with the terrible realization that whatever peace she'd found in the last 3 days was about to shatter. Below, the front door opened. Tiana Reed stepped inside like a queen reclaiming her throne. Izzy found the twins 2 hours later, sitting on the floor of the East Wing hallway, backs pressed against the wall, knees pulled to their chests. They looked like matching porcelain dolls someone had forgotten to put away. She'd been wandering, trying to avoid the raised voices coming from Killian's study. Tiana's voice carried like shattered glass, all sharp edges and calculated volume. The twins had apparently been dismissed the moment they were no longer useful props in their mother's performance. "Hello," Izzy said softly, crouching down a few feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough not to crowd. 2 pairs of dark eyes looked up at her. Cautious. Evaluating. "I'm Izzy." The girl on the left, the one with a small flower clip in her hair, spoke first. "I'm Hope. This is Faith. It's nice to meet you both." Izzy sat down on the floor across from them, ignoring the way her dress pulled around her. "Have you eaten anything?" Faith shook her head. Hope looked like she wanted to answer, but was waiting for permission that would never come. "Would you like to see if we can find the kitchen?" Izzy asked. "I'm new here too, so we might get lost. But getting lost together is better than getting lost alone." Hope's eyes brightened slightly, but Faith spoke with a voice much older than 5 years should sound. "Mama says we need to stay where she put us. She said we're supposed to be good and quiet." The words hit Izzy like a fist to the stomach. She knew that instruction. Had lived it. Heard it in 1,000 variations throughout her childhood. Be good. Be quiet. Take up less space. Apologize for existing. "Your mama's busy right now," Izzy said carefully. "And I think she'd want you to eat something. You've had a long trip. Are you the lady Mama came here because of?" Hope asked suddenly. Izzy blinked. "What did she tell you about me?" "Nothing." Hope glanced at her sister. "But we heard her on the phone. She was angry. She said Daddy was trying to replace us with someone who didn't matter." The cruelty was so casual, so automatic, that it took Izzy a moment to process it. Tiana hadn't just spoken those words. She'd said them where her children could hear. Where the poison could seep in and teach them that some people were disposable. "Well," Izzy said, keeping her voice steady, "I'm not here to replace anyone. And you both matter very much. More than you know." Faith studied her with unsettling intensity. "You're different than the other ladies." "Different how?" "You don't look at us like we're trophies." Hope leaned forward slightly. "Mama's friends always smile big and call us precious, but they look at us like we're furniture. You look at us like we're real." Izzy's throat tightened. These children had learned to read insincerity the way she'd learned to read danger. They'd been trained to perform, to be perfect, to exist only as extensions of their mother's ambition. They were mirrors of what she'd been, what she'd survived. "You are real," Izzy said firmly. "And you deserve to eat when you're hungry, rest when you're tired, and ask questions without permission. Come on." She stood and offered her hands. After a moment's hesitation, both girls took them. Their fingers were small, cold, uncertain. As they walked toward the kitchen, Faith whispered, "Mama won't like this." "Then we'll handle it together," Izzy said. "That's what people do when they matter to each other." Hope squeezed her hand tighter. Behind them, in the study, Tiana's voice rose to a crescendo, followed by the sharp sound of a door slamming. The games had officially begun. Killian found Izzy in the garden the next morning, sitting on a stone bench with Hope and Faith on either side of her. They were looking at a picture book, and the twins were actually laughing. Not the performative giggles they'd learned to produce on command for their mother, but real laughter that came from their bellies. He stopped in the shadows of the doorway, watching. And then the dragon said. Izzy paused dramatically, making her voice deep and ridiculous. "I'm not scary. I'm just misunderstood." Hope dissolved into giggles. Faith smiled, a rare, genuine expression that Killian hadn't seen on his daughter's face in the 4 years since Tiana had taken them. "That's silly," Faith said. "Dragons don't talk." "How do you know?" Izzy challenged gently. "Have you ever asked one?" "No, but—" "Then maybe they're just waiting for someone brave enough to listen." Killian stepped into the garden, and all three looked up. The twins' faces immediately shifted, became cautious, performative. But Izzy's expression remained open, curious. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, starting to stand. "Stay," he said, then to the twins, "Hope, Faith, Mrs. Chin is looking for you." "Something about cookies in the kitchen." The girls exchanged glances, then scrambled off the bench with the universal enthusiasm children had for sweets. As they ran past him, Hope paused. "She's nice, Daddy," Hope whispered, so quietly he almost missed it. Then she was gone, chasing her sister toward the house. Killian sat down on the bench where Hope had been, leaving space between himself and Izzy. "You're good with them," he observed. "I'm honest with them," Izzy corrected. "There's a difference. Most people struggle with that distinction. Most people think children can't tell when they're being lied to." Izzy closed the picture book, running her fingers over the worn cover. "But they can. They always can. They just learn to pretend they don't notice because it's safer." Killian studied her profile. She wasn't beautiful in the way Tiana was beautiful, calculated, weaponized, designed to devastate. But there was something compelling about the way she occupied space. No apology. No performance. Just existence without pretense. "Tiana came to see me last night," he said. "After you took the girls to the kitchen. I assumed she would. She said you were overstepping. That you were trying to turn my daughters against her." Izzy turned to face him, and there was no fear in her eyes. Just tired acceptance. "And what do you think?" "I think Tiana has spent 5 years teaching those girls that love is conditional and safety is negotiable. I think you fed them without asking for anything in return. And I think that terrifies her." Something flickered across Izzy's face. Surprise, maybe. Or relief. "You're not going to send me away?" "Why would I do that?" "Because I'm complicating things. Because your ex-wife wants her position back. Because She stopped, searching for words. "Because I'm not supposed to be here." Killian leaned back, studying the garden. "Do you know what I've learned in 20 years of managing people? Everyone lies. My associates lie about loyalty. My enemies lie about strength. My allies lie about their intentions." He turned to face her. "You're the only person in this house who's told me the truth since the moment you arrived." "What truth?" "That you're terrified. That you don't trust kindness. That you've spent your life surviving people who wanted you erased." He paused. "And that despite all of that, you still chose to protect 2 children you just met because you recognized yourself in them." Izzy's hands trembled slightly in her lap. "That's not special. That's just basic decency. In my world, basic decency is revolutionary." They sat in silence for a moment, the morning sun warming the garden, the distant sound of the twins' laughter drifting through an open window. "She's going to destroy me," Izzy said quietly. "Tiana. She's going to find a way to make me the problem. Let her try." Killian stood, offered his hand. "I've built an empire by knowing who to trust. And calculated kindness, Miss Quinn, is still kindness." Izzy took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. For the first time since arriving, she almost believed she might actually survive this. The meeting took place in a hotel suite downtown, far from the Blackwood estate. Tiana Reed sat in a leather chair by the window, perfectly composed, while Marcus Quinn paced like a caged animal across from her. His brother Daniel and their 2 cousins stood near the door, blocking any exit. "You're certain this will work?" Marcus asked for the 3rd time, his voice pitched high with nerves. Tiana examined her manicured nails with practiced boredom. Are you questioning me, or are you simply afraid of your own shadow? I'm questioning whether Blackwood will actually. Killian will do exactly what he's always done when faced with inconvenience, Tiana interrupted smoothly. He'll eliminate it. The only reason he's kept your niece this long is novelty. Curiosity about what his enemies thought they could pay him with. But novelty fades. She looked up, her eyes sharp. And when it does, he'll remember what he actually wants. Daniel cleared his throat. And what does he want? His legacy. His empire. His daughters. Tiana stood, walking to the minibar and pouring herself scotch. Things I can give him. Things that ridiculous woman shuffling around his house with my children cannot. So we just take her? Marcus asked, uncertain. You reclaim her, Tiana corrected. She's your family, after all. You made a mistake in the settlement arrangements. You're here to correct it. Bring her back where she belongs. She took a slow sip. Killian won't care. He might even be relieved. One less complication to manage while we negotiate custody. And if he does care? Daniel's voice held a thread of fear. Tiana's smile was razor-thin. Then you'll have done me a favor by proving he's distracted by sentiment. Either way, I win. If he lets her go, I know he's rational and we can deal. If he fights for her, I know he's compromised and I can use it against him. Marcus stopped pacing. What's in this for us? We just risk Blackwood's wrath for your convenience. You risk nothing, Tiana said coldly. You already owe him a debt you can't pay. This gives you leverage. You can tell him the girl is mentally unstable, that she's been feeding him lies about your family, that she's dangerous and you're obligated to protect her from herself. She set down her glass. I'll corroborate everything. I'll tell him I've seen her unsettling behavior with my daughters. She's been nothing but kind of hope and faith, Marcus muttered, then immediately regretted speaking. Tiana's gaze turned glacial. Then we'll use that too. We'll say she's been inappropriate. Trying to poison them against me. Killian is protective of those girls. If he thinks for 1 second she's a threat to them, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic below. When? Daniel finally asked. Tomorrow night. There's a charity function at the mayor's estate. Killian will attend. I've made certain of it. The house will have minimal security, and your niece will be alone. Tiana picked up her purse, preparing to leave. You'll arrive as concerned family members. You'll be persuasive. You'll remind her that monsters don't keep pets, they collect trophies. And trophies eventually break. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Get it done. And make sure she understands that kindness from a man like Killian Blackwood isn't protection. It's a countdown. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The Quinn brothers looked at each other, fear and greed warring on their faces. This is insane, Marcus whispered. But he didn't say no. Killian left the charity function early. Something felt wrong, a sensation he'd learned never to ignore. The mayor had been too accommodating, Tiana too pleasant, the entire evening orchestrated with a precision that set his instincts on fire. He called the estate from the car. No answer from the main line. He tried Mrs. Chen's direct number. Nothing. His driver pushed the Mercedes to 80 on the empty road back, and every second felt like an eternity. When they pulled through the gates, the house looked normal. Lights on. No visible disturbance. But Killian could feel it, the wrongness hanging in the air like smoke. He found Mrs. Chen first, locked in the pantry, a bruise blooming on her temple. Mr. Blackwood, she gasped as he helped her up. They came an hour ago. For men. Said they were Miss Quinn's family. They had papers, documents. I tried to stop them, but... Where is she? They took her. Forced her into a car. She didn't scream, didn't fight. Just went quietly, like she'd been expecting it. Killian's blood turned to ice. The girls? Upstairs with their nanny. They're safe. They didn't see anything. He was already moving, pulling out his phone, dialing his head of security. I want the Quinn family location. Now. Every property, every associate, every place they've been in the last month. And I want it 5 minutes ago. The response came through before he reached his study. An abandoned warehouse on the south side, registered to a shell company connected to Marcus Quinn's shipping operation. Killian grabbed his coat and the gun from his desk drawer. "Sir," his driver said carefully. "Shouldn't we bring the team?" "No time." Killian was already heading for the door. "But follow in 10 minutes. If I'm not out in 20, burn the building down." The warehouse was dark when he arrived, a single light visible through the grimy windows on the second floor. Killian entered through the service entrance, moving silently through shadows he'd learned to navigate decades ago. He heard Marcus's voice first, pitched high with false authority. "You see? We told you. Monsters don't keep pets. He's probably relieved we took you off his hands." "He's not coming," Daniel added. "Why would he? You were never anything but a burden." Killian reached the stairwell, climbed slowly, listening. Then he heard Izzy's voice, quiet but steady. "You're wrong." "About what?" Marcus laughed. "About Blackwood? Sweetheart, men like him don't develop feelings. You were a curiosity. A joke. Do you really think?" "I think you're terrified," Izzy interrupted. "I think you've been terrified since the moment you left me there. Because for the first time in your miserable lives, you did something you couldn't justify. You gave me to a man you thought would kill me, and instead he treated me like a human being. And that broke something in your story about why I deserved what you did to me." Killian paused at the top of the stairs, staying in the shadows. "We're taking you home," Daniel said, but his voice shook. "Where you belong. I don't have a home with you. I never did. You don't have a choice." "Actually," Killian said, stepping into the light, "she does." All four men spun around, faces draining of color. Marcus actually stumbled backward. Izzy, tied to a chair in the center of the room, met Killian's eyes and something passed between them. Not relief. Recognition. "Mr. Blackwood," Marcus stammered. "We can explain. She's not stable, she's been lying." Killian walked forward slowly, deliberately. "Manipulating? Poisoning my daughters against their mother." He smiled, and it was the coldest thing in the room. "That's what Tiana told you to say, isn't it?" The silence was deafening. "Here's what's going to happen," Killian continued, his voice never rising above conversational. "You're going to untie her. You're going to apologize. And then you're going to leave this city and never come back. And if we don't," one of the cousins said stupidly. Killian pulled the gun from his coat. Didn't aim it. Just held it loosely at his side. "Then I'll demonstrate what happens to people who wound the innocent. And you'll learn too late what that costs." Marcus moved first, fumbling with the ropes binding Izzy's wrists. His hands shook so badly he could barely manage the knots. "I'm sorry," he whispered, though whether to Izzy or Killian was unclear. "No," Killian said softly. "You're afraid. There's a difference." When Izzy was free, she stood slowly, rubbing her wrists. She walked past her family without looking at them, stopping beside Killian. "Did you mean it?" she asked quietly. "What you said in the garden?" "Every word." She nodded once, then turned to face the men who'd spent a lifetime breaking her. "I forgive you," she said. "Not because you deserve it, but because I'm done carrying your shame." Then she walked out, head high, leaving them to face the monster they'd created. Killian holstered his gun. "You have 60 seconds to disappear. After that, I stop being merciful." They ran. Tiana Reed was waiting in the entrance hall when they returned to the estate. She stood perfectly composed in a black cocktail dress, clearly expecting a different outcome to the evening's events. Her face fell the moment she saw Izzy walk through the door beside Killian, unharmed and very much not disappeared. "Killian," Tiana started, her voice smooth despite the shock. "I heard there was some trouble. Is everything?" "Upstairs," Killian said to Izzy quietly. "Check on Hope and Faith. Tell them you're safe." Izzy hesitated, glancing between him and Tiana, then nodded and headed for the stairs. Tiana watched her go with barely concealed fury. We need to talk, Tiana said once Izzy was out of earshot. No. You need to listen. Killian walked past her into his study. She followed, closing the door behind them. This is about her, isn't it? Tiana's composure was cracking. That woman. You're actually choosing her over your own family. My family is upstairs, probably terrified because their mother used them as leverage in a power play. Killian poured himself whiskey, didn't offer her any. You coordinated with the Quinns. Told them where to find Izzy. Promised them I wouldn't care. I was trying to simplify things. She's a complication you don't need. She's the only honest person in this house. Tiana laughed, sharp and bitter. Honest? Killian, she's nothing. A burden her own family threw away. What could she possibly offer you that I can't? The truth. He turned to face her. Every single day since you walked back into my life, you've been calculating. Performing. Using our daughters as props to manipulate me into giving you what you want. Power, status, access to my empire. He took a slow sip. Izzy doesn't want anything from me. She doesn't lie to make herself look better. She doesn't weaponize vulnerability or use kindness as currency. She's weak. She survived a family that treated her as disposable and still chose compassion over cruelty. That's not weakness. That's strength you'll never understand. Tiana's mask finally shattered. You're actually in love with her. Killian didn't answer immediately. He thought about Izzy in the garden with his daughters, making them laugh without agenda. Thought about her quiet refusal to be afraid, her admission that she had nowhere left to put the fear. Thought about her forgiving the people who'd tormented her, not for them, but for herself. I respect her, he said finally. Which is more than I ever felt for you. The words landed like bullets. I gave you children, Tiana hissed. I gave you 5 years of my life. You gave me daughters I adore and 5 years of calculated manipulation. Then you left, took them, and cut off all contact because I wouldn't give you control of my business. He set down his glass. You didn't come back because you missed me. You came back because you heard I'd taken in someone you thought was beneath both of us and you couldn't stand the idea that I might build something without you. She's fat, Killian. She's awkward. She's everything you spent your life rising above. She's everything you spent your life pretending not to be. Killian walked to the door, opened it. Human. Vulnerable. Capable of caring about someone other than herself. If you choose her, you lose me. You lose access to hope and faith. Try it. His voice dropped to something dangerous. Try to keep my daughters from me again, and you'll learn exactly how far I'm willing to go for people I care about. The lawyers will be at your hotel by morning. We'll negotiate custody properly this time, with courts and mediators and everything you tried to avoid. Tiana's face went white. You can't. I can. And I will. He stepped aside, gesturing to the open door. You're no longer welcome in this house. If you want to see hope and faith, we'll arrange supervised visitation. But your days of using them as weapons are over. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then she saw something in his eyes that stopped her. She gathered her purse, her dignity in tatters, and walked to the door. You'll regret this, she said. The only thing I regret is not doing it 4 years ago. She left, heels clicking sharply on marble, the sound fading as she disappeared into the night. Killian found Izzy an hour later on the balcony off the library, staring out at the grounds. Hope and Faith were asleep in the guest room nearby, having refused to let Izzy out of their sight until exhaustion claimed them. Tiana's gone, he said, joining her at the railing. I know. I heard the car. Izzy didn't turn. She'll fight you. For the girls. For everything. Let her. I have better lawyers. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the estate quiet around them. Why did you really keep me? Izzy asked finally. That first night. You could have sent me away. Killian considered the question, the honest answer. Because everyone who's ever come into my life has wanted something. Power, money, access, status. They've all been willing to lie, manipulate, destroy others to get it. You're the only person who's ever stood in front of me and just existed without agenda. He paused. And because when they gave you to me as punishment, you didn't cry or beg or try to seduce your way to safety. You just waited with dignity for whatever came next. That's rarer than you know. I'm not special. You're the only person in my life who's never tried to get blood without guilt. He turned to face her. Everyone else wants permission to be cruel. Justification for their violence. You just want to exist without apologizing for it. Izzy finally looked at him, eyes bright with unshed tears. What happens now? Now you stop surviving and start living. He offered his hand. If you want to. She stared at his hand for a long moment, every instinct screaming that safety was temporary, that kindness always had a price. But then she thought about Hope and Faith sleeping peacefully nearby, about the warm room with no locks on the inside, about a man who'd come for her when everyone said he wouldn't. She took his hand. The woman they threw away just became the queen of the Blackwood Empire, Killian said quietly. And that, I think, is going to shock everyone who ever underestimated you. Izzy smiled, real and genuine, for the first time in years. Good, she said. Let them be shocked. Epilogue. 6 months later, Hope and Faith officially moved into the Blackwood estate under a new custody arrangement. Tiana Reed accepted a settlement that kept her comfortable but powerless. The Quinn family was never seen in the city again. And Isadora Quinn, the woman who'd been given away as a burden, became the only person Killian Blackwood ever truly trusted with his empire and his heart. Not because she was perfect, but because she was honest. And in a world built on lies, that made her the most dangerous woman alive. The meeting took place in a hotel suite downtown, far from the Blackwood estate. Tiana Reed sat in a leather chair by the window, perfectly composed, while Marcus Quinn paced like a caged animal across from her. His brother Daniel and their 2 cousins stood near the door, blocking any exit. You're certain this will work? Marcus asked for the 3rd time, his voice pitched high with nerves. Tiana examined her manicured nails with practiced boredom. Are you questioning me, or are you simply afraid of your own shadow? I'm questioning whether Blackwood will actually. Killian will do exactly what he's always done when faced with inconvenience, Tiana interrupted smoothly. He'll eliminate it. The only reason he's kept your niece this long is novelty. Curiosity about what his enemies thought they could pay him with. But novelty fades. She looked up, her eyes sharp. And when it does, he'll remember what he actually wants. Daniel cleared his throat. And what does he want? His legacy. His empire. His daughters. Tiana stood, walking to the minibar and pouring herself scotch. Things I can give him. Things that ridiculous woman shuffling around his house with my children cannot. So we just take her? Marcus asked, uncertain. You reclaim her, Tiana corrected. She's your family, after all. You made a mistake in the settlement arrangements. You're here to correct it. Bring her back where she belongs. She took a slow sip. Killian won't care. He might even be relieved. One less complication to manage while we negotiate custody. And if he does care? Daniel's voice held a thread of fear. Tiana's smile was razor-thin. Then you'll have done me a favor by proving he's distracted by sentiment. Either way, I win. If he lets her go, I know he's rational and we can deal. If he fights for her, I know he's compromised and I can use it against him. Marcus stopped pacing. What's in this for us? We just risk Blackwood's wrath for your convenience. You risk nothing, Tiana said coldly. You already owe him a debt you can't pay. This gives you leverage. You can tell him the girl is mentally unstable, that she's been feeding him lies about your family, that she's dangerous and you're obligated to protect her from herself. She set down her glass. I'll corroborate everything. I'll tell him I've seen her unsettling behavior with my daughters. She's been nothing but kind to Hope and Faith, Marcus muttered, then immediately regretted speaking. Tiana's gaze turned glacial. Then we'll use that too. We'll say she's been inappropriate. Trying to poison them against me. Killian is protective of those girls. If he thinks for 1 second she's a threat to them, she didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic below. When? Daniel finally asked. Tomorrow night. There's a charity function at the mayor's estate. Killian will attend. I've made certain of it. The house will have minimal security, and your niece will be alone. Tiana picked up her purse, preparing to leave. You'll arrive as concerned family members. You'll be persuasive. You'll remind her that monsters don't keep pets, they collect trophies. And trophies eventually break. She walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle. Get it done. And make sure she understands that kindness from a man like Killian Blackwood isn't protection. It's a countdown. The door closed behind her with a soft click. The Quinn brothers looked at each other, fear and greed warring on their faces. This is insane, Marcus whispered. But he didn't say no.